Hey, it's me, Ivan Green from Dare Greatly, and I'm with a friend of mine called Steve Deal, who is planning actually no, has planted a church. Can I say that now officially, Steve?
You can, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
that's
three
ex
weeks
that,
old.
mate. So where is it? Tell me exactly the town that you've actually planted the church in.
Yeah, it's Adelong Beach in New South Wales. It's on the Central Coast, um, 20 minutes from Gosford.
Oh wow. Okay. It's a beautiful part of New South Wales too.
Yeah, it's absolutely stunning around
Yeah.
here. So I'm really sad that the Lord called me here and somewhere.
Well, if it's not you, it had to be someone, I suppose. So,
Yeah,
um,
it's got to do it.
mate, I'm so glad that we can have a chat today because, in a way, I kind of need to do this to apologize because I stole something from you. I didn't ask permission first.
Yeah, I want the
Um,
car back, man.
yeah. So a little while ago, I wrote a piece, five insights on from Bezalel and Oholiab. And for those who are wondering who in the world they are, they're two really obscure characters in the Old Testament of the Bible who were called by God to build the tabernacle, the place where God was going to live. And the reason why these two guys are so significant is because they reveal a lot of the character of God in relation to beauty and excellence and doing whatever we can do in a way that pleases God. And Steve, when we first kind of met each other, different context altogether to now, you said something to me that kind of really stuck, and I stole it. And now I'm wanting you to explain it. So, what you said to me was that if it's not beautiful, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
So, when you first coined that phrase, what did that mean to you?
Well, God is beautiful, and that's one of his attributes, right? So that's a part of who he is.
Mm,
And you can't look at creation and not see that God is beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely stunning, and God is the source of all beauty. And I don't know, we just kind of think that beauty calls our hearts and our minds to something greater, something higher than us, something
mm,
transcendent. Um, and like we're building a church. We've got a building that is 93 years old,
oh wow.
and it was kind of literally falling down, when we
Mm,
got it, and termites had eaten out, a lot of the framing,
mm,
um, and we set out on this journey to, you know, renovate the building, and you just come up to all these little inflection points or little moments where you're like, okay, the flooring, we can get it done with vinyl strips for $9,000,
mm,
or we could do a really nice, um, the floorboards that we wanted that looked beautiful.
mm.
They were an extra, another 7 grand. They were like, um, almost double the price.
Wow.
And so, we had these moments where we're like, man, we want the church to be beautiful. We want it to
Mm,
reflect God's beauty.
mm.
And one of the things about beauty is it kind of costs you something.
Yeah.
Um, and in the case of renovating a building, it's money
Mm,
and time. Um, but yeah, we just keep coming up to these things where we make decisions like, um, you know, when they were fixing all the framing, we said to our builder, hey, look, we've got this pokey little door from the foyer into the church. Can you build us a lovely archway while you're at it?
mm,
And we made the door more beautiful, the entrance more
mm,
beautiful, and every little detail along the way, we've we've tried to make the church more beautiful, because we're setting the table for people to walk into, and we want to create a beautiful space for people to walk into. But more than that, and this may seem silly to people, because like God can meet you anywhere, anytime, right? He's omnipresent. Where two or more are gathered, he's there. But we want to create a space for Jesus and invite people into it, rather than creating a space for people and inviting Jesus into it. If you know what,
I
it's
do.
a subtle difference, but making all these little choices, to have plants everywhere, and to have we've got a fire pit outside with beautiful couches in a garden. We want it to be beautiful, to reflect the Lord's beauty, but we do want people to walk in and feel like it's it's a transcendent place, that God is here.
So where you are now and what you've just been doing is a long way away from what you were doing before you came back to Australia. So do you want to just tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so Beck and I were in just an awesome church in California called Sandals. We were running the worship team there. It's a 30,000 member church. It's got 14 campuses. We oversaw 22 staff on the worship side. There was another, I don't know, probably about the same on the production side. Then over 600 volunteers on the worship and the production team combined. And we were often leading worship at the main campus, which was it was a big couple of thousand seats, big monster PA, very very produced. We would everyone would have to fill out an eval at the end of the service, and we were all very big on excellence, making things better. And what we're doing now is very, very different. You could liken Sandals to a mega mall. There was a giant harvesting machine that just got so many people saved. They were baptizing 1,000, 1,200 people a year. We're doing a corner store here in Australia, starting from scratch, and it's not produced. We plan out our services, but kids will run through the building. There was one little kid ran through the building and almost naked the other day. It was pretty funny. During the middle of the service, and sometimes our daughter, who's 2, escapes from kids' church and comes running in while we're leading worship or preaching or whatever. And it's not. Man, if I had to fill out an eval form after this service every week, it'd be a long. But we don't care, And so the thing is, what we're really going after here, and I'm not saying other churches don't do the same thing. We just differently, but we're just going after the presence of God in a really big way. Like the driving scripture for our church is, love the Lord with every passion of your heart, with all the strength that is within you. Like Jesus said that was the great and supreme commandment. So that's what we're going after. We want to love God first. Everything else comes out of that. And there are, like I've heard other churches say things like, Yeah, man, we do 12 minutes of worship at our church because the church doesn't understand worship. So, we don't want to alienate them or whatever.
Right.
Um, loving God is our top priority, and we want this to be a house of his presence where people come and love him. And and the second is like it in importance, and that's love people. But we want to love God first, love people next, and we feel like everything else flows out of that.
So it sounds like that there could be a dark side, seems odd to say, to the pursuit of excellence, over if it's the end goal rather than the vehicle that allows us to create a space for the presence of God.
Yeah, look, the cart gets put before the horse in a lot of churches. I've heard preachers say, "Hey, look, worship is just a warm up for the preaching. It's just to put people's hearts open, so that the word can go in." I'm like, well, it's not. Worship is worship. It's like, when people walk out of church and like, "Ah, man, I didn't like worship today." It's like, it wasn't for you, dummy. It was for God,
Yeah.
So the worship, it doesn't matter what it looks like. We sing this song, "I don't care what it looks like." That's one of the lines in the song. What is it? Come in like a fire, come in like a flood. I don't care what it looks like. I'm so in love. We definitely want to leave room for God to do what he wants to do. And one thing at Sandals that we learned was we learned how to program. We learned how to make everything run down to the minute, and we learned how to do powerful speaking transitions between songs and find great teaching moments and things like that. And yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Like, I had a friend of mine who went to Upper Room in Dallas, and he says to me, "Man, Upper Room, we just go so much deeper than you guys do at Sandals." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, man." Sandals has 30,000 people, and they're baptizing 1,200 people a year. It's a giant harvesting machine. Like, it's pulling people in from left, right, and center, and they're getting saved. And Upper Room is smaller, and people do go deeper in worship, and that's great. God makes a whole bunch of different style of churches for different people at different points in their life, and that's okay. And so we definitely want to be a church that goes pretty hard after the presence of God, and be a place where people pour out their love upon God, and we want it to be beautiful. Like, I think church architecture is an interesting thing to look at too, because we had a lady the other day. She texted us or messaged us on Instagram, and her first question was, "Do you have windows in the church?" She goes, I can't do the blacked out thing anymore.
Fair, I suppose. Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, yes, we've got a whole bunch of windows. Our room is flooded with light, natural light. We don't have a light show. We don't have a giant PA system. We don't have an LED screen around us. And we don't want a smoke machine. If we get smoke in the building, it's either going to be because the building's on fire, or it's the presence of God, the glory of God falling in place. We don't need a smoke.
That's cool. That's cool. It sounds like excellence is contextual then. I mean, you can have Sandal's model, which is extraordinary and huge and produced, and then what you have on your heart to produce. And to me, they both carry a sense of beauty, or can. They both carry, there's an excellence behind it. So there's a contextual element to it all as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sandals was, it's an old warehouse. It's a blacked out warehouse.
Yeah, no windows.
no windows at all. You know, like Beck and I used to get a little bit distracted by the light show that went on, and
Sure.
occasionally we'd have to tell the lighting guys, like, mate, pop a Valium or something, like you stress the lights. You know? But yeah, look, it's a very different thing. I mean, we'd be on that stage and we'd have a fully pro band and a massive PA system, and you know, when you said something or sung something into a microphone, made it thundered throughout the room, and it was great. Here, it's small, it's intimate. We're meeting in the round. If we grow, we'll have to go to a second service or third. We used to do 5 services a weekend at Sandals.
Wow.
And then you'd walk out, you'd get to the 5th service at Sandals, and sometimes you'd be like, hang on, did I worship during that set, or did I just sing the songs? And I was thinking about a burrito after church or something, you know, because we were starving.
Yeah.
So you'd have to be really careful to make sure you engaged. But yeah, I don't think we really want to start campuses either. If we grow, we can do a couple of services on a Sunday morning. We could do a Saturday night service, but at some point we just slice off a bunch of people in the church and send them on down the road.
Yeah.
And
so your quote was that if it's not beautiful, you're not doing it. So in the light of even forward planning, how does beauty and excellence fit into that?
I'm trying to think of a specific example, but I know Beck and I have said these words so many times where we go, yeah, that's not beautiful. We're not doing that. We can't do that. Even down to, like, we do Friday night dinners in the church hall, and we get a bunch of people come out, and we, you know, got candles and some wine and some food, and so I like, just to give everyone a break, I would order pizzas for everybody, maybe once a month or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, Beck is so hospitable, and she likes serving people when they walk in and making things beautiful, that it's almost an insult to
buy pizza.
Yeah. And you know, like Beck will, she'll say, hey, do you want a glass of wine and a cheese board? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, if I make a cheese board, I'll get a block of cheese and I'll cut up 10 slices and throw some jats on there.
Yeah, nice.
So she doesn't let me make the cheese boards. She makes beautiful cheese boards.
Leave it alone.
And so, you know, I say things to her like, man, not every time we eat together needs to be like a massive event. It doesn't necessarily need to be beautiful every single time, but it kind of does for her. It's her personality. Yeah. So excellence is tied to beauty, as is cost. So yeah, we just keep paying the price for that kind of thing, and then.
So can I just jump in there? Tell me about that. Talk about that. The cost of pursuing excellence and pursuing beauty in ministry.
Yeah, like, you know, there's a financial cost, obviously, but
of course, yeah.
When you set up a church really beautifully, people come in and they don't necessarily care that much, right? So, you know, there's marks on the walls already after a few weeks.
Sure.
You know, the kids come in and absolutely trash the place, and when you make something beautiful, like we planted a garden, and you know, the kids jump into the garden, and because we got these beautiful rocks in there, and they'll jump off a rock and land on a plant that you just planted, and just wreck it. So like, there's a cost there, you know. When you build something beautiful, it will get trashed. Just ask God. He's a pretty nice planet that we've done a pretty good job of wrecking. You know, wars and famine and all sorts. But you know, the approach with that is like my old pastor in Atlanta, Dean Sweetman. He would call it signs of life. When there's
Okay.
a hole in the wall, then it's
Yep.
just a sign of life.
Nice. Yeah.
On the stage at C3 Atlanta, where I was for 10 years, I went back to visit a few years back, and I looked to the left of the stage, and I could see the repair in the gyprock where
Okay.
my head went through the wall one time, goofing off,
Wow.
And
Of course.
yeah, it's like it's just signs of life. So there is a financial cost. There is an emotional cost. It's like you build something beautiful. It's like the parable where the Lord's talking about putting on a feast and people don't come.
Yeah.
He's doing something beautiful and people are not appreciating it. I saw this great quote from John Piper the other day. He was talking about sin. He's like, what is sin? Well, the short answer is like, it just means missing the mark, right? But he says it's the glory of God not honored, the holiness of God not reverenced, the greatness of God not admired, the power of God not praised, the truth of God not sought, the wisdom of God not esteemed, the beauty of God not treasured, the goodness of God not savored, the faithfulness of God not trusted, the commandments of God not obeyed, the justice of God not respected, the wrath of God not feared, the grace of God not cherished, the presence of God not prized, and the person of God not loved. But yeah, the beauty of God not treasured, that's a thing. Like when you create something beautiful, you kind of treasure it because you made it, but not everyone else does. So so that's a thing.
So, if you were to give encouragement, actually, before I ask that, I was just thinking earlier, the thing that triggered the article that I wrote in this conversation now was just a memory I had when I was a young leader at a conference, and I was sitting at a table with a bunch of people who were way older than me at the time. And one of them, who was the leader of their organization, said something along the lines of, "We don't need to be good because the Holy Spirit will make up the difference." And even as an immature leader at the time, it just really jarred with me. I couldn't quite fathom the arrogance behind it, and whatever other sentiment there may have been. And so, there's been times throughout my own leadership career life where I've been criticized for pursuing excellence and wanting things to be done well. God is not a mediocre God. We don't serve a mediocre God by any stretch. Look at creation like you're talking about. It is not, it is so far from mediocre, it's not funny. So why should the things that we put our hands to reflect mediocrity when they should be reflecting God's character, which is full of beauty and excellence? So as you think about, this concept of beauty and excellence, what would you encourage anyone in a leadership position to do? I mean, we're not just, you've talked a lot about building church and being in the creative team, but it could be a business, it could be a ministry, or could be anything that we feel called to do. What would you say is important for people to know?
Have you ever eaten in a restaurant where like the food is absolutely amazing, but you've got just the worst decor?
Yeah.
The crappiest thing.
Yeah.
Like I think, to your friend's statement about excellence. I mean, you will go to some of those places just because the food is amazing. That's the main thing. It doesn't matter that you have to stick 5 napkins underneath the table to stop it from rocking, or that the waitress will bite your head off, or whatever. But having said that, it's really nice when you go to a restaurant that's got the food, and it's got the view, and it's got the decor, You know, like we went to a restaurant a while ago. We marveled at the decor, but we marveled on the decor for an hour before the main dish came out.
Yeah, okay.
And it's
Yeah.
and we've had
Only so much marveling.
yeah
Yeah.
in a church context, like we've had people like we had someone say to us a while back, yeah, I'd come to your church, but it's a church plant, so it's probably going to suck for the first couple of years. And he's like, we'll go to this other church because we hate that church, but the kids love it. They got a good kids program, and your
Wow.
kids program's probably a couple of years away. There's a lot of things you could say about those
Yeah,
comments.
right.
Um, and it is hard to, like people say, oh, we went to this church, the worship was great, but the preaching was boring. And then we went to this church and the preaching was great and the worship sucked. And then we went to this church, the kids program was great, but like it's like a kind of a consumer mentality towards church rather than just kind of being in the church. But I think it's possible to try and, our heart is to try and nail, a good kids program, beautiful worship, good preaching, a nice environment with lots of natural light, a yard for the kids to play in,
Yeah.
a jumping castle. I mean, we want excellence, but it's on a much smaller scale than, say, Sandals, which they had excellence going on everywhere.
Yeah.
There were things at Sandals, like we had a list, when we were looking for a job over there. We're like, we need a long-term stable pastor, because that's important, locking into a place for decades or a lifetime, that means a lot to me. That says something. Financial security of the church, location. But one of the big things is, man, I need a good preacher, because I've sat through decades of boring preaching, and life's too short. I need someone who's going to capture my ADD mind, and my pastor there was, he would spend 20, 30 hours a week on his message. And when he presented a message, it was absolutely excellent, really, really good.
Which comes back to the cost that you're talking about. There's a cost of time, and really, when you think about it.
Yeah, there really is. But yeah, look, it just, to me, it boils down to God is beautiful. God has created this amazing planet with sunsets and birds and dolphins and flowers blooming and music that's the soul, beautiful food, wine, beautiful people, and everything beautiful in this world, it comes from God. Everything ugly in this world, it comes from sin. And we want to create a little sanctuary here that is beautiful, where people can come and experience God and pour out their love upon God. That's kind of our thing. So we'll see.
Man, that's so cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
So far,
so cool.
So
far, so good. So, what's one thing you would say to someone who perhaps doesn't think that what they do is excellent, but they're giving it a go? They're really trying hard.
Well, I would just say do it with authenticity, be you. Like my musical mentor was this guy named Chris Folsom, and I tried to sing like him. I tried to play my guitar like him. I'd call his house and his wife would go, "Hey, baby." I'm like, "Oh, no, it's just Steve." And one day he said, "Man, you just got to find your own thing, and be true to who God has created you to be." And if you can do that, like, people just want authenticity. Like that's, I'm finding more and more that is absolutely critical. So I don't preach any differently to the way I'm talking now, or the way I would talk at the dinner table. You know, I don't yell. I don't put on a voice. You know, I always find preaching funny when they yell so much. It's like we had to do that because we didn't have PA systems 100 years ago, but we do now. So you don't have to yell
That's
anymore.
right. Yeah, yeah.
But that's just my personality. I'm very chill, and
Yeah.
but I think knowing who God has created you to be and to bring your authentic self, for your authentic self to show up every time is important. And yeah, I mean, it takes time. There's a lot of people planting churches that don't find a building like we've found. They they find a blacked out warehouse,
Yeah.
and God shows up.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
Authenticity, super important.
Yeah. Because at the end of the day, I think you can pursue excellence without authenticity, and everyone knows it. It might be sharp and slick and, you know, glossy, but there's no substance or life or beauty to it, perhaps, or if there's beauty, it's superficial.
Yeah,
Um,
like my wife, I asked her the other day, like, what's your default setting when it comes to worship leading?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because mine isn't the big hype kind of vibe. I'm like, you lead me beside quiet waters and you restore my soul. Green
Yeah,
pasture,
yeah, yeah,
peace,
nice.
peace of God. Beck does the big thing really, really well, but her main thing is vulnerability.
Yeah,
And like she would stand up on that stage in front of thousands of people and just smash open her heart like an alabaster jar,
yeah.
and this beautiful perfume comes out, and
Mm,
people relate to that beautifully. Like I've heard preachers for years and years, and you never hear anything vulnerable
mm,
come out of their mouths.
yeah.
Beck is incredible with that, and it's
Mm,
so endearing. But it's like when you're. I was reading Isaiah chapter 1 yesterday, and he talks about silver
mm,
full of impurity, and
mm,
the only way to get the impurities out is to put it to the fire and
yeah,
have it melt.
yeah.
And having a soft, authentic, vulnerable, melted heart
Mm,
is key, and that's beautiful.
yeah, yeah,
And that yeah, I don't know, that just pulls people in such a beautiful way into the presence of God
yeah.
when you
Because I
lead.
think when we because I think when we talk about excellence, we're not talking about perfection, right? We're not talking about making things perfect, and that's sometimes where we get things wrong because we're not trying to make things perfect because we can't, but we are. So there's a difference there, I think. Um, and I suppose in terms of, well, in terms of beauty, the reality is that there is beauty in imperfection. That's where beauty is. It's in the imperfections to some
Yeah,
extent.
absolutely.
Not to say that God's not imperfect. God is ultimately perfect. Um, but we see beauty in the brokenness, and we see beauty in imperfection. Um, and perfection and excellence aren't the same thing.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, God in the Old Testament would come to prepared places, right? Like a
Mm, mm,
tabernacle,
yeah,
a temple,
yeah.
and they were meticulously planned
Mm,
and crafted. Um, when he's talking to the woman at the well in John 4, it's
mm,
like you're not going to have to worship on this mountain or that mountain or anywhere. And
mm,
the act of worship that Jesus talked about being remembered in all the Gospels is
mm,
the woman who comes in and breaks open that alabaster jar, and
mm,
there wasn't anybody else in the room at the time
mm,
who thought that what she was doing was a good idea,
mm.
except for
Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he finds beauty in that kind of vulnerability. Um,
Beautiful.
beauty is a communicable attribute of God, meaning that we share that. We recognize beauty, and we can be beautiful. And obviously God doesn't look at outward appearances either. He looks at heart. So at that famous scripture in Samuel when he's talking about Saul.
Yeah.
God sees what's on the inside. So
yeah.
Mate,
thank you so much. We've talked a lot. We could probably talk some more. We might have to find some other topics to talk about in the future. But I'm so grateful for your time today, Steve. Really appreciate you.
Mate, always good talking with you.
Thank you. Bless you.